Hi, my name is Gary Cruz, and I do videos on drones, gadgets, and technology. Today I'm going to be continuing on with the unboxing onto the build of this ATEM Studio HD and this 4U rack case. I was missing some components like this cables, like some shorter HDI cables and shorter cables that I wanted to optimize in this case. And hopefully with this rebuild you can learn a couple of things too. All right, first off, I'm going to start with removing the Duo screen here because I had this Ethernet cable that I was using temporarily to test things out. So let's just go ahead and take this out here. As you can see, things are pretty tight in here. I try to use the shortest cables I can, which are about 1 foot to 1.5 feet. They generally worked pretty well. Let me go ahead and disconnect this Ethernet cable from my router and get that out the way. All right. And I'll just go ahead and take out the SDI out, the power, the Ethernet out, Ethernet in, and this SDI in. Get that out the way. All right, so you can see it's pretty tight in here. Some of the other videos that I've seen are mostly doing it with the older ATEM Studio. And the biggest difference here is that the old ATEM Studio was pretty thin, almost as thin as the Duo screen. And you can see that this is a little bit deeper, so this case works out because it's a little bit deeper, even though it's called a shallow case. It's about 10.5 inches. So I'm gonna go ahead and continue removing the components here. In fact, I think I don't need to actually take this out. I'll switch this around and remove the components on the back because those are where I need to replace some of the cables and replace some of the connectors. All right, let's just turn this around. All right, here's a little bit more of what's going on. All right, this is a really cool patch panel. You can see there's some holes missing here only because I ordered the wrong Ethernet. I ordered pass-through, and what I needed were these chassis feed-through cables or connectors for Ethernet. Originally, I had a Cat5 connection here, or interconnect here, that I was going to use with Cat5 to HDMI, but I decided I'll just go ahead and switch this over to HDMI. Let's get this opened up and installed. All right, so you can see this is an HDMI feed through. And the really cool thing is that these connectors have these labels from Redco audio. And I like how it's just really clean and professional looking. I'll just go right here. Okay, I got these disconnected, and let's just put these over here. I'll push down on that as I push this through on this side. This connector will be for my little mini PC that's in there. Okay, looks like it's just spinning around and around. Let's go ahead and get this piece tightened up. All right, so I've got the HDMI connectors all in there. So now, the funny thing is I had it upside down the first time, so I had to go through the trouble of switching it back out. And for those who are wondering, it's this particular feed through. So make sure you get the right one. And the one that's even more confusing is the Ethercon ones. So make sure you get this particular one. I'm gonna slot these two in here, and one will be for my Ethernet in, an idea that I got from Here to Record, thank you for that. And also the Ethernet out that comes from my router that I'll hook up to another switch, which is this. I'll hook up this switch, and what this does is that it'll connect to my, what it'll do is it'll connect to my PTZ cameras. All right, so let's go ahead and get this one installed. Start with the internet. this down so we can see. Get this over here. All right, now that I have this complete, here's where my internet will be coming in and the internet for my computer coming out from the hub. Here's what it looks like from the back. I've got the USB, Ethernet, XLR for the audio, which is nice. That's new in the ATEM Studio HD. This is the program. And you'll notice I'll have program coming out in HDMI. And that's not native for the ATEM Studio, but since I have it connected to a HyperDeck Studio, it also outputs the program in HDMI, and that will be used for streaming. And then I have a multi-view that goes out to a larger monitor. And I got my SDI inputs, and then I've got my HDMI inputs. And these are just numbered 1 through 8 for all the camera connections. All right, the next thing I'm gonna do is remove the fan because I've got a couple things stuck onto this APC unit. You'll see when I take that out. But let's get the fan out of the way first. Let's get this ProCool fan out. Simple as that. And there's this just one plug. This is the temperature sensor, which I'll probably put on top of the ATEM Studio for a better, more accurate reading. Unless I'll just keep it at the top for where all the heat is. I think I might leave it at the top. Get that disconnected, and that's the fan. Next up is to remove the APC power unit. Now this thing's going to be pretty heavy, so I might have to lift it up. Oh, there's a bunch of things plugged in there, so I'll have to unplug them. Gotta unplug the router. Okay, now that I disconnected the router, I should be able to pull this out. There we go. All right. Okay, you'll see that I've got the computer. You'll see that I've got the computer on the bottom here, and I also have this USB hub connected to this piece. The first thing I'm going to do is replace this somewhat long USB 3 cable that plugs into this mini PC with this shorter, I think this is a 1-foot cable. I know I'm pretty anal about the cabling, so I just wanted to make sure it fits accordingly. All right, so you can see this one's at least about 1.5 times the length. Plug that over to this USB. I just connected this HDMI splitter, and the reason why I did that is sometimes the HDCP output interferes with the, when you plug the PC directly into the ATEM Studio switcher, it might show up as black, and I noticed that it didn't show up after I put in the splitter. So the splitter is a good way to bypass the HDCP. As you can see, I have a USB hub here, and if I ever needed to configure the ATEM switcher or the HyperDeck Studio, I don't want to have to take it apart, so I'm going to go ahead and put these USB cables in here to make that an easier setup for later on, or at least have a permanent setup for configuration. And so if I ever needed to configure it, I'll just connect to this PC and then configure it. I've got one for the ATEM Studio HD, and I've got one for the HyperDeck. I don't think I'll ever need it, but just in case. This is such a hassle to take this thing apart, I'd rather just have it all built in. I might as well add a connection for the monitor as well. So let's move this over. So that's USB 2, USB 2, and USB-C. The other thing I also got was a USB light, and that also plugs in there, and hopefully, if I have some room. So I'm going to take this cable and plug this into here, so I can have 4 SDI cameras, but if I ever need playback from the HyperDeck Mini, I'll just leave this as an output and I'll just have that hanging, and then I can always patch that back in, and I'll just use that as a connector. Let's get the APC back into this case. Next up is the fan, which is right here. I'll just leave the temperature sensor hanging out like that. I'm not sure, well, maybe I'll put it towards the back. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll have it going towards the back. We'll move that temperature sensor back there. I'll tape that in, plug this back here. Now this power cord needs an exit, so I'm going to see if I can route it so that it actually goes on top of here. I might have to push up against it, but we'll see. All right, let's get this thing turned around and see what's on the other side. Let's see. We got to get some internet into it, so we'll use, I don't know, we'll use green for the external. That will feed this router. Get that routed to the front here. At least I'll know what that is. And then we'll use black for the computer. And we'll make that go out this side. All right, this USB cable, this is the USB-C that's coming in from the HyperDeck. We'll stick that right over here. We should have another USB. This USB 2, which is coming from the ATEM Studio, we'll plug right in over here. And we'll have one left for the Duo, which will plug in right here. In fact, you know what? I think I'll actually plug in this LED. Let's see if we can get that in here. So it looks like I can get an LED up in here, and maybe I can there's some adhesive on here, and maybe I can get this routed up in here. Let's see if I can get a better angle. All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to actually take this out because I'm going to route, I don't want to cut it. I'm going to have this route underneath just in case I needed some extra light. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this. Yeah, that's what we'll do. Take off this tape. And from my experience with these LED lights, trying to attach these to my desk, is that this tape really isn't that good. And so what I'll do is I'll probably reinforce it with some packing tape, just so that sticks a little bit stronger. All right, got that installed. I'm gonna route this back through here. Shove these cables all through. And this is what it looks like turned on. Now I can see. It's pretty slick. Okay. Just something handy. I can change the color if I wanted to. Purple. But I like blue. Let's see what other modes it's got. Nope, that'd be a little too distracting. Oh, we can do how bright. Let's see. Let's control the brightness. Alright, we'll keep it on a low. We'll keep it on a medium brightness there. But there it is. Alright, let's get everything plugged in. Let's start with this HDMI cable that's going into the input of 4, going into the output of this splitter. Plug that right over here. If I was to do this again, I wouldn't get these really thick cables because they're really hard to maneuver in this tight space. Man. And then this one will go to the HDMI 4 as an out on the panel. I'll just go ahead and get this out of the way and push this back on the other end. That's HDMI 4. I'll just have to... Now, as you can see, this one is really long, and for some reason I miscounted the HDMI cables that I needed. Let's do the HyperDeck Mini plugged into the Ethernet. Right over there. And then let's get some power plugged in. So the next up is the fan. Here's the fan. We'll plug that over here. And one tip that I'll have is label your plugs so you don't get confused on what goes where. Next up is the router. See, I've got the label right here. Plug that in right here. And we'll plug the router in here. The next thing is the HyperDeck. This one. We'll plug that right over here. And the Duo's next. Now the Duo had this weird angle. It was going to go in this way. So I've got this little extension so that it'll fit. Put it over here. I'll just let that hang out for the Duo. And the next one is the PC, which is this. We get the PC in here. And we'll route the PC cable to the other side. I'll just grab it on the other end. Put the HDMI splitter right there. And then finally, it's the ATEM, which is the last one. I have the fan and the router on the unswitch, so those are always on. And this HDMI splitter will go to the splitter that's on this side. While I was working on this, I noticed that the LED lights were already peeling, so I'm going to use some reinforcement. I use the same stuff for my desk. It's super sticky. And this will just at least prevent me from having to kind of deal with it later on. And, you know, especially if you travel and this thing's kind of shaking around, get this thing in there nice and tight. And you don't have to put a lot, just enough to reinforce it. That's the thing with these. I don't know what, it says 3M, but you would figure 3M would be a lot stronger than this. Alright, that should be enough reinforcement. It's not too messy. I also routed the SDI cables. So I labeled them too because I can't see from behind here. So I named this the Duo Aux and the Duo Multi. And thanks again for the tip. From here to record, I'll use the aux tip to connect this to the right monitor of the Duo. And speaking of the Duo, let's go ahead and get that in there. Here's the Duo. And let's do SDI in. And that's for the aux, which is good. We'll do this is for the multi. Let's get USB in here. And let's get the power. And let's get this plugged into the Ethernet in, and this will go, wait a minute, out and in, out. These reversed. Out will go to the ATEM. It's getting really tight here. This will go into the USB. Right over here into this USB hub. That's what I hate about USB. It's single-sided, so sometimes you think it's going in, you flip it around and it's not right, and you flip it around one more time. You know the drill. And let's get this one into the Ethernet. And that is all I need for this Blackmagic. All right, let's get this all tightened up. I just realized that this is opposite, so I'm going to switch this out so I can plug one of the outputs of this USB into one of the outputs of that USB into here in case I needed to have easy access to the PC. So I'll just swap this out. And these are just reversible, so I can just turn it around like this. Remove the locking mechanism. And flip this around like so. There we go. And now it's reversed. So all I have to do is just plug this one over here, right there, on the computer, and that'll be the hub. And the internet, which is green, will plug in here. And the internet for the computer, which plugs into the hub, is this black one. I've got the XLR cables. I marked one of them as 1, so we got channel 1 right there. And I'll put that over here. That's channel 1. This one will be channel 2. Also, with my experience with the audio cables, you should really check out Mogami. They're pretty good. And program, I'm just going to use this HyperDeck out. Right over here. And the program out for that Since the ATEM Studio doesn't have a program out, I figured out that the HyperDeck program out can be used as the HDMI. That can connect to a monitor. I'll plug that right in there. Okay, multi-view, which is in there somewhere. Before I forget, let me plug in the computer, which I got labeled here, so I don't get it mixed up with the splitter, which is over here. And the splitter power goes right in here. Okay. Continuing on, I got this long multi-cable, which I'll probably replace next time I open this up. I just didn't have a short HDMI cable handy. And then, no, that one will be HDMI 4. I'll do that later. Good thing I have this labeled. So I've got multi, which will go into this multi-view. This is coming out the ATEM, I believe, yep. And these SDI cables are really short. So let's just get these a little bit closer. I almost got these too short. I think these are 1 foot long. I'm gonna do that one last. Okay, so let's do these HDMI ones. This is HDMI 1. HDMI 2. HDMI 3. Move this 4 out the way. HDMI 3 and HDMI 4, which is way too long. And then we'll kind of move those in there. Again, if I was to do these again, I'd probably get a smaller gauge HDMI cable because these are really tight. Okay, last thing is to plug in these last 4 SDI cables, which are too short. 1, 2, 3, 4, okay. Okay, I got everything assembled and I checked most of the connections. In fact, I got a small camera up here that I unboxed earlier, and I've got a PTZ camera connected on the HDMI port. So let's just do a quick test of the SDI connections. Oh, actually, you know what? In fact, this is pretty cool. Let me show you this. So I've got my router connected to my iPhone, or vice versa. I got my iPhone connected to my router. And what I can do is enable AirPlay on this. So remember I was telling you about that there's a mini PC in there? Well, I installed Air Server, and the Air Server is loading and it's mirroring my phone. So now I can kind of show what's going on back here. You probably can't really see it that well, but I've got an SDI connection here. Let's go and try that over here. And we'll actually go ahead and switch over to, okay, so camera 6. So this should go over to camera 7. All right, camera 7. And the last one's camera 8 and camera 8. So all the connections work fine. This works out pretty well for not only just having a virtual camera, but also if the presenter is using a laptop, they can also use AirPlay or Chromecast. All right, so that really wraps it up. One thing I didn't cover, well, before I wrap it up, I got this really cool wireless keyboard from Logitech. You'll also see that in the Amazon link below. It has the wish list of all the cables and everything I used. In fact, I put some improvements on the cables other than the ones that I've actually used, because some of the ones that I used were a little too thick. So the ones that I put in the wish list would be things that I wish I would use instead. So hopefully that helps. If you have any questions, put them down in the comments. and look forward to some additional videos I'll make in terms of going through some of the features. This was mainly just the build video. The next video will probably be some details of how I'm using the cameras and some of the additional features of the ATEM Studio. So if that's something you're interested, please subscribe. Thanks for watching.